very excited to be able to talk today about how to tell our nonprofit story so that donors actually want to give, right? I think that we all know the age-old adage, facts tell, but stories sell. And yet we always have to be keeping in mind what matters most and communicating effectively. So let's move on into that next slide, please, Trish. Newsflash, guys, your organization needing money is not a compelling case for support. Full stop. Okay. Most nonprofits don't really have an impact problem, but we do sometimes have a communication problem, right? Today, we are really going to examine how we can tell our story, how we can invite others to become a part of that story, right? By the end of the session today, we want you to be able to understand the three biggest storytelling mistakes that most nonprofits make. We want you to learn a simple framework for building a donor-centered message, making them the hero in the story. We want you to be able to evaluate your organization's current fundraising story and know how to move forward to be more effective, right? So let's move on to that next slide. Budget gaps, staffing shortages, equipment needs. Guys, these are real valid challenges. But guess what? Funders don't want to invest in our problems and challenges, right? They want to invest in solutions that create change, right? They want to fund hope, possibility, that new normal that we paint the picture for them that could be possible because of their generosity is what they are investing in, right? So we're going to play a little game here. I'm going to ask everyone to drop messages in the chat. So get ready. This is interactive time. I need people to play along with me. Um, I want you to put in the chat what service, program, or activity your organization does uniquely provides that drives change. Okay. No wrong answers here, but let's put some things in the chat. I warmed you up, so hopefully you're listening and not sleeping. Put our things in the chat. What are we doing that provides service that is going to drive change in the community, in the world? Nobody's doing anything out there? Come on, guys. We got this. We got this. Come on. I'm ready for someone to play. Yay. Thank you, Maria. Wellness program services to all clinic patients in need to address each patient's social determinants of health. Amazing. April, our free wings camp for grieving youth. Great examples. Keep them coming, guys. Keep them coming. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I need you to be thinking this way because as we move forward, we're going to be looking at how we tell the story. So keep dropping those in the chat, but we'll move on to the next slide. We're going to review three storytelling mistakes that can cost our organization. Number one, talking more about the organization than the mission. How many of us are offering history, program descriptions, all of our achievements, those things, right? These are great. They help us build credibility and legitimacy in our space, right? They have a place within our materials, but it's really not here, right? If we removed your logo and stripped your branding from an appeal, would donors still know why your work matters? Okay. We have to focus on the mission more than all of our accolades and accomplishments and those facts, right? Again, great for building credibility. There's a space for them. But when we're trying to tell our story, we've got to focus on the mission. Number two, next slide, please. Leading with information instead of emotion. Back to that facts tell, but stories sell. Research on charitable giving and the psychology behind it suggests that emotional connection is often the catalyst for giving. Well, evidence is going to build confidence, trustworthiness. Impact is going to help donors feel confident in that decision, right? So we want to use those accolades, the details from point number one as a follow-up, but we've got to lead with emotion, right? People feel first and then they'll justify their decision with the facts. So emotion is going to open that door so that evidence has room to build donor confidence. Let that soak in. Emotion will open the door so that evidence has room to build confidence. There's a place for both of them, but let's lead with emotion first. All right. And number three, Number three mistake that we make, right, that can cost us is forgetting the donor's role in the story. The donor is the hero, the organization, and you, as the ambassador of the organization, you are the guide. Don't accidentally make the organization or yourself the leading character. Make sure you are focused on the donor as the hero, right? So, a couple of examples here, right? Instead of our work saves lives, which may be very true. What if we said your gift means that families never receive a bill from St. Jude for treatment, travel, housing, or food so they can focus on helping their child live? That ignites emotion, right? How about instead of we need $50,000 for staff salaries? Maybe true, right? What if we said your investment today will allow us to serve 200 more families facing food insecurity? Huge difference. Same Same need, right? It's how we're communicating it. Okay, now I'm going to pass it over to Michaela to really work on that simple story framework with us.
Thank you, Marty. So, like Marty said, when we kick this session off, we're going to go through kind of the structure that you can use. And then after that, we'll help work alongside you in like defining your own story. But let's start with what the two essential questions are you need to ask before beginning your draft of a story. First, who are we helping? Instead of vague demographics like uninsured adults, which is true perhaps, but not attention grabbing. Think about building a persona that your funders or donor partners can really connect with. For example, a grandmother that's raising her grandchildren, or a single parent that's working two jobs. It's a very clear picture about the who. And then you need to ask, what challenges are they facing? How can you help illustrate what this individual or what this segment of your service population is going through? What keeps this community that you serve up at night? What are their stressors? What's the problem that you are looking to solve as their partner? Next slide, please. In this, once we've identified the who and the what, then we get to ask, then why now? We need to authentically and without manipulation really explain to our prospective donors why this is urgent. Why does action need to occur in this moment? And then the exciting part, the solution. How? How can the donor help today? How can you partner alongside this prospective donor to make a difference in the world? What's the donor's role? Make that clear. And the call to action needs to be simple so they can immediately understand how they can make a difference in someone's life in this moment. And then we talk about what's the new normal? What changes? What's the difference made through this partnership? What does success look like? You need to end with that transformation that's inspiring, that makes your prospective donor or your donor feel excited about working alongside you to make it a difference in your who or those that you're serving. Next slide, please. So let's look at an example before we start doing this on our own. Here we go. Let's use this before example of we provide essential healthcare services to uninsured residents in our community. Okay, that's a truthful statement. It's what you're doing, it's who you're serving, but I'm going to ask you all, based on what we've talked about today, what could we do to make this better? Feel free to put it in the chat, or if you're someone that's like, I don't really want to type all that out, feel free to unmute yourself. What could we improve, or what's maybe not the strongest about this before statement? Any brave souls that will unmute and identify? I bet you could come up with something pretty easy. Talk about the number of people impacted. Thanks, Maria. Yeah, it's pretty ambiguous, this statement, this before statement. All right, let's go to the next slide and think and look through how we could improve this statement. So here's an example of our after. Last year, more than 400 local adults, exactly what Maria pointed out, delayed medical care because they couldn't afford insurance. This is a very clear picture. And I like the word local too. It helps us connect to the service pop or the population being served. Without support from community members like you, the donor is the hero. These patients receive treatment, medications, and a path back to health before a manageable illness became a medical crisis. Remember that piece about urgency? Clearly identifies why this is important right now and in this moment. So we went through an example together today. Now Jake is going to help all of you think about your personal storytelling.
If any of this is potentially overwhelming to you, we have kind of an assessment that we use if we're going to adjust and evaluate how we do this. We kind of go through this short framework, and there's kind of these 5 categories. So you don't have to share this, but you can kind of follow along and give yourself a score in each of these with whatever your current case for support storytelling, whether it's something that's written or just sort of your elevator pitch that you use when you talk to donors, when you explain what you do at work. This is lots of uses across the gamut here. So here are the different categories we'll go to, and we'll go through these kind of one at a time here. Let's go to the next slide. All right. So what you'll do is you'll rate yourself 1, which is we rarely or we barely do this, to 5, which is we are nailing this every single day. We have no improvements to be made. 1 to 5, 5 being best on the following 5 categories. First is emotional connection. And the way we define this is we regularly tell real human stories. So something about, even if you anonymize the name, something about people for those who interact with our work. So if we have something that we're doing for the world, for the community, for people, for whoever your service population is, there's probably a human involved, and not like, oh, there's this population and they get this help. But here is John, or here is Sally. And before, John was blank, and now John is blank with this intervention that we were able to do. So if we do this consistently and we tell this regularly and we're collecting these stories, we have a mechanism for capturing, and both on the capture side and on the sharing side for all of this. And those tend to create some sort of an emotional response. That gets you a good bit of the way there. 5, we do this very consistently all the time. 1 is we don't do this yet, but maybe we came to a webinar and now we feel inspired to start, hopefully. Number 2 is, again, the donor focus. We talk so much about like, oh, we're this organization, we're so nice, we're the heroes, we work for a nonprofit. But if we can put the donor as the hero, as the center of the story, as Marty mentioned, you're going to get a lot further if they can imagine themselves being the change maker. If we describe ourselves, the organization, as the change maker, that's good, nothing wrong with that. It's better if we can describe the donors, our funders, as the change maker. They're the ones who hold the power for us to do this or not. They have to decide to give or not. And if we're going to try to compel them to give, we need those scales tipped in our favor. So donor focus, 1 would be donors clearly understand their role, which means they understand how this dollar or these $10 or these $10,000 applies to actual change or impact. That you can tie a dollar to a specific impact and what that actually means. And second, we emphasize impact more than programs. What we always talk about is what this does for the community, not what it does for us. Not we spent $10,000 and bought this piece of equipment, but this piece of equipment allowed us to do X, Y, and Z for the population that we serve. We kind of skip that middle step for our donors. So 1 to 5 emotional connection, 1 to 5 donor focus. If you'd like to share these things at the end, you can, but we won't make you. But try to write this down or type it down so you can keep track. All right, number 3. Number 3 is clarity. Clarity. We always say clarity over detail. Detail is great, but you need to be able to explain this with 6th grade English. If you can't explain it with 6th grade English, maybe you don't even understand it fully, and that's okay. This gives you an opportunity to do that. So clarity. We can explain our mission in 1 compelling minute. In that minute, I go from having never heard of your charity before all the way to not only do I understand what you do for the world, but I understand what you need, the problem that you solve, and how I, as the donor, can make an impact on the mission that you are putting forward. So you can do that entire thing in 60 seconds. If it's more complex than that, we need to narrow our scope somehow so that we can do this in a minute. This also applies to written materials. If we can't do this in a page or maybe even half a page, our case for support may be too dense, it may be too complex. It may be true also that the problem that we're solving in our intervention is complex, but we need to be able to distill it down into that 1 page, that 1 minute, so that it can be very clear and I can quickly go. If they want more detail, if the donor needs more information, we can certainly get into that. But you need to set your top line elevator pitch to be able to get you most of the way there. The second thing with clarity is that your staff, your board, and your volunteers have a consistent story. So if you want the message to be consistent across the board, the best thing is to kind of make it for them. Say, here are our talking points. Like, here are the things that we want to say as we're talking about the campaign. Here's the problem we're trying to solve. Here are 3 bullet points. Say these in your own words, but say them kind of like this. So everyone has this very consistent message. They probably won't get to that on your own. You think, oh, they know what we do. They work it live it every day. It's like, not if we don't tell them specifically. So if you don't do the work as the head of organization or head of the fundraising department, head of philanthropy, whatever you work on in your role, you have to give this to these people. Even if you think they know these things really well, they might. But to kind of unify it and make it clear, best to come from you, and then let them kind of experiment and put it into their own words from there. So 1 to 5 on clarity. Number 4 is urgency and relevance, as Michaela said, the timeliness. Like, why is this important now? Why can't we solve this 2 years from now? Why is it in this month that we need to solve this problem? So we can clearly explain why the support matters now, and we connect the needs to the local community impact. Not necessarily for the world, but here's why this matters to the people that we surround ourselves with. So why is this relevant to my people? People tend to want to give locally, not that international aid isn't a big lane, like crisis fundraising, like you have an earthquake in Haiti, you're going to see a lot of aid go to that area. But if people can choose between usually healthcare in somewhere in Africa, if they live in the United States, and somewhere in their local community, they tend to slightly prefer their local community because it's like, oh, that's the healthcare that I could use, that are the people that work with me, that I go to church with, that whatever. Not to say that one is better or worse, but people just tend to favor those that are relevant and they can see. So the relevant impact to their immediate scope and why this matters in this time frame that we have. Okay, finally, story collection. So again, we talked about this. There's some sort of mechanism in place on both ends. It's 2 different mechanisms. Mechanism 1 is collecting stories, whether this is from your providers or caregivers or frontline staff, whatever version you have in that for your organization, but you have some way of regularly collecting stories, a system in place for collecting stories. Not like, oh yeah, we go and collect stories once in a while, but we have some sort of pipeline or some sort of procedure in place that we know that we talk to the people who interact on the front line, have a way of bringing these stories and recording these stories consistently. Even if it's 1 a month, that might be all you need, but you need to have some kind of something that brings these stories in to have that emotional appeal. The second thing is that we have media, quotes, testimonials of all of our different stakeholders just so that we can use these in our materials. This is for marketing, it's for internal morale and the things that we do, it's for our external materials, it's for our website, but most importantly, it's for our funders so that we just have these in our back pocket. We should hopefully not be in a situation where we need these things so we have to go out and then get them because the donor asked for them. We just have sort of a bank that we keep sort of regular. You don't have to have a ton of these, but have just a few good ones, on your plate that you refresh at least every couple of months so you can always go back to those. We have some organizations that do a nice job of this by sharing these always at board meetings. What they'll do is they'll open each board meeting or they'll close each board meeting with like a mission moment or a story of some kind where there's, hey, we're just going to tell you a 5-minute story about someone that we helped. And it just kind of helps get the vibes going because the board meetings or staff meetings, they can feel very administrative and office like. But if you start with like, hey, let's not forget why we're here. Like, we're a nonprofit, we chose this path because we care about people or something. And here's why we're doing what we're doing. So as we get to the meeting minutes and the financials, we're kind of grounded in that emotion and that storytelling, and we're reminded as to why we're doing this. So just a little quick tip there. But yeah, rate yourself 1 to 5 on each of these 5 categories. We can go to the next slide. And this kind of gives you a score. So if y'all are willing to share, you can either share your overall score, or if you don't want to share your overall score, you can share maybe what your lowest category was, which gives you some indication of what you might want to improve next week in the office. So if you're anywhere from 21 to 25, you're probably good with your storytelling structure. You're probably all right. If you're in the 16 to 20 range, we call that good. 11, 15 is like okay, and if you're 0 to 10, it's like we have just started this, and that's totally okay. But this gives you an idea of where you're at, and is this something that we actually need to impact and change and put attention into? So I'll give it just a second. If y'all, again, are brave enough, are willing to either put your overall score in there just to see where you land in terms of your storytelling, or if you want to put your lowest category in like something that you want to meaningfully change next week. We love to share theory in these webinars, but even more important to go back and have it actually result in impacting your organization. So I'll give you just a second. Thank you, Maria, for being a good participant today. 18 lowest category might be donor focus. If you're willing to unmute and share a little bit about that and what might be the next step in the solution there, would love that. If you're feeling a little bit quiet today, also fine. We'll move on to the next person. So
Never quiet, never
yes, I
quiet,
love that.
friends. So it's one for me being new to the org, needing to dig deep into what the existing marketing has been to look at the donor focus. But what I've seen so far, it is very stats focused first, not emotional focused first. And second, is the donor actually the change maker through our communications? And I haven't seen it strong enough during my tenure yet. So I rated it a little low. Our ED might feel differently, and I'll bring this back to him and we'll have a good, productive conversation.
Yeah, easy change to make, thankfully. Like you just a couple of tweaks in the words here and there and just how you talk about it when you have those conversations. I think that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Maria. Anybody else want to share theirs, either their score or what they might want to change? Yes, and Michaela says, remember, no need to feel discouraged. If you're on the lower range, that just means you have room to grow, and which is exactly why we do this. Like, none of us are perfect at everything, and the best way to improve is to kind of identify the gaps that we have and the things that we can make meaningful change on. And this is an exercise to identify those gaps, which is great. Lowest is urgency. If I don't know, it's called development. Yeah, if you want to unmute and share a little bit about that.
Yes, sorry, I'm Christy.
Christy, hi,
From
yes, great to
Dallam
see you.
Center. Yeah, we're an environmental center, a conservancy. We have a summer camp and a preschool, but I don't feel like we kind of state any kind of urgency. So I think we could definitely take advantage of that.
I love that. Well, what is urgent about your work? Can I ask you that? Like if I was say, hey, why is this important? But rather than trying to do it in 2029, why would you say this year is a good year to do?
Well, in general, just getting kids outside. I mean, everything is screens now. I feel like that's a great urgency. Like, hey, come for a hike, get out in nature. It's important to do it while your kids are young, establish that love of nature. And then we are kind of in the quiet phase of trying to build a new building. So that's going to require a lot of urgency because our preschool is very popular and it's at maximum for, I think, the last 10 years we've had waiting lists. So we need
I
that
mean, I don't love
space.
that you have waiting lists, but that's an easy one. Do you know how many people you turn away on an annual basis or like a cycle
Um,
basis?
I don't know how many we turn away, but our wait list is usually 4, and we have, I think, 42 spots. So our wait list is between like 2 and maybe 6, but this year it's 4, and we only have 42 spots. So once those spots are filled, that's it. And I think people kind of know, oh, if you don't get in early, then so I don't
Yeah.
have a way to capture, how many we've
Yeah,
turned
and that's a great
away.
way to just say, hey, look, we're turning away dozens of kids who would otherwise get access to the following things, and our dream by next year is to turn away no kids. And that's why I wanted to
Mhm.
talk to you today. I'd love to have you, and you kind of go right into your spiel from there. So I really do love
Right.
that. Thank you so much for sharing, Christy. Any final in there before we move on? Awesome. We'll go to the next slide. And I will turn it over to Marty. And I think she might offer, so if y'all want a little bit more private help or don't want to share in front of the group, this is where this one is going next. So Marty, let us know what we can do next if we want to dial in our storytelling.
Yes, guys, definitely, especially if you fell lower than you really would like to and you want some help, definitely scan that QR code and book some time to spend with us to have a one-on-one session so we can review it with you and talk through it with you. Ria would love the opportunity to do that. So that QR code, I'll leave it up there for another second. And for sure, be sure to join the conversation with us.
And we can do any, if we have any general questions now, we can leave this up there for give people a minute. But if you have any
Yeah, any
questions or thoughts,
questions? Anything surprise y'all on your assessment if you don't want to share like the numbers or whatever? Did anything surprise you? Just like, gosh, I felt like we were doing really good here But now when I actually am forced to like write it down, I'm like, oh, maybe we're not. Anyone? Anyone? Questions? No? Oh, thank
That one.
you. We've got another. Oh, Maria again. On the third wave of philanthropy point, is that what we're seeing a lot of focus around coalition building and systems change?
I think we turn that to Jared as the researcher of the third wave.
Yes, Jared. Are you able to unmute and entertain that question? Sorry. Maybe he's having a challenge on that. Well, guess what, Maria? I know he would be happy to talk with you a little bit further about that. Great question. Appreciate that. Any other thoughts, comments, questions before we move on and adjourn for the day? All right, next slide, please, Trish. I would love to draw your attention to our upcoming virtual
Alrighty.
forum.
I
Yes.
saw Christy's hand go up, and I just want
Oh,
you to feel comfortable, Christy. So you go
yes.
for it.
Go, Christy, go. I did not see it on the
Sorry.
yes.
No, I forget how to raise my hand like digitally, so I was like that. I
Absolutely fine.
I just wanted to share one thing I was surprised about. Like I was really happy with how concise our mission was, but I just think that there could be a little more emotion put into it. So I'm gonna kind of wordsmith that. So thanks. I appreciate that advice today.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's so easy to be so close to something. And we know, you know, the like emotional connection, and you know, the like you see the real kids and the real impact and all of that. But we sometimes forget that like not everyone knows what we know. So I'm really glad that maybe that little self-reflection there can help just tweak it just enough. Because sounds like you have an incredible mission, and one that if you can boil it down into some stories like Power of One and real people, that would be really helpful for people to really understand the work and be moved. Yeah. So thank you so much.